Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. We've got a few more talks, which will be about connecting the finance stack. And first up, we have connecting customer financial information with SGFinDex. And to speak to us about that, we have Daryl Low. Daryl is an assistant director at GovTech in Singapore. So, Daryl, please take it away.
Yes, hi everyone. Yeah, as Graham has mentioned, I'm Daryl. I'm actually one of the product people over at GovTech, and I work with data exchanges. And today we are sharing with you not on the nitty gritty tech details of SGFinDex, but more on the business principles and how did we get it out to go live. So just some background coverage. SGFinDex is short for Singapore Financial Data Exchange. It was launched in December of 2020 as the world's first public data infrastructure. I will touch on how it works with our National Digital Identity Tech Stack shortly. But first up, just to simplify in one picture, right? It is a joint effort to be a single federated request to pull all your financial data. One, which is the government information on maybe your taxes, your housing loans, and as well as your CPF retirement funds. So it's something like 401k. And second, you have your financial data from participating banks and other financial institutions. And thirdly, we have investments data from your central depository. So this consolidated pool gives you a fuller picture of your financial readiness for retirement adequacy. So when it comes to talking about money, it can be a pretty touchy subject, right? So we had a lot of views on whether or not it's secure and how we actually, you're going to transfer this through a highway, through a data highway, an exchange provided by the government. How safe is it? Does this mean now that the government knows how much I hold in my private estate? But no. So addressing those concerns, we go with the principles of how we run our other products over at NDI. Our design principles are pretty user-centric. So like consent, your data can only be retrieved after you have given explicit consent that, yes, I agree. And you retain full control over where your data goes to. At any point in time an application requests for your data, you have the right to say no, and no information will be exchanged. And your data is protected. And SGFinDex is built to be extremely neutral. We neither store nor have the ability to actually read your data. So any packages that goes through SGFinDex, we are completely blind to it. SGFinDex, like I mentioned before, it utilizes SingPass, which is our national digital identity authentication tool, right? We also leverages on MyInfo for its authorization. And this ensures that every user is verified before the bank or any FI can release the information to us. Your data is also encrypted end-to-end, just like before, and only the intended recipient who needs to receive your data payload is able to read it. For a project of this size, we required a lot of industry collaboration and strong government support. So let me touch on what the government did first. So from the government, MAS, which is the Monetary Authority of Singapore, they led the industry as the financial policy lead. And we also participated in building an app. So Ministry of Manpower built a free financial planning tool called My Money Sense. So for any Singaporean, any citizen of ours to just use for free. And Smart Nation Office, they guided us and the industry on handling other policy-related issues, especially in the field of data. So that we'll cover in a later slide as well. But for GovTech, we provided technical leadership and as well as all the tools that we have for authorization, for authentication, not just to accelerate the speed of the project, but also to build that same security and trust that our industry partners have been working with us very closely for many years. So we have to recognize one thing, that when we talk about industry, it was a little bit more of a challenge than getting all the government agencies to come together. We have to understand that the same participants in SGFinDex are also competitors. So just how willing am I to work with one another? So what we actually did, in order for this to work out, we needed the banks to come on board, but we couldn't go to the bank one by one. We went to the associations. So ABS, the Association of Banks Singapore, they rallied their members to join SGFinDex. It led under the banner of public good, right? And the banks were the first group of financial institutions that undertook this calling to work with us for the pilot that we launched in December of 2020. To give you a brief of what they did, data is extremely messy and fragmented when it comes to participants across an industry, right? So as an industry, we went back to what we call the principles, right? How do you handle this data? The first principle that we said is that each data field must be relevant to financial planning. If not, there is really no reason for it to be there, right? And this data field that you want to provide for sharing must be available by every participant as well. So nobody has a competitive advantage over another. It needs to be fair, right? And when we come into problems about how do you want to store the data or how do you want to display the data, we fell back to what the ISO standards dictates. So everyone has a common base frame to follow. And future additions to these principles for data standardization has to adhere to the existing principles. But we also broke into 3 governance tracks that handles business discussions, technical brainstorming, and as well as legal and compliance, right? What's extremely critical to realize here is that the industry leads this effort, right? Every bank and insurer has to nominate a member from their ranks to lead these discussions in these tracks, while the government agencies will support across all 3. So depending on whether or not the legal work stream is going to talk about how we are going to answer the question about liability, the relevant ministry or government office will have to send representatives to attend and handle that conversation. We are more there to provide guidance and advice whenever required than to actually lead the conversation. So the industry actually does have some degree of control, but within reason. So this is all well and good, but we also have to recognize that not everything can be mutually agreed in these work streams. So we do have a path for reaching the upper management to make some important calls, right? If we cannot come to an agreement, the first thing that we do is that all the leads in all these relevant work streams will have to come together as a smaller focus group. And if all the leads are unable to come to an agreement, we must find a compromise. And who can decide in this compromise is all the heads of the organizations will then join industry and government dialogue that happens every few months, just to tackle these larger issues that the organizations on the whole are unable to come to a compromise with. So just to recap, we had 3 different work streams: through business, technical, and legal. And then we also have a larger work group where everyone, heads of departments, meet together and decide. So this is a lot of meetings, right? And it can be frustrating at times and also fun at times. And we're running this for about 1.5 years, right? So through these 1.5 years, what we have is that we have gathered about 75,000 monthly active transactions, right? That means people come in and they pull 75,000 times of their consolidated data pool. We also have upwards of 200,000 users that has joined and used the service since, and we total about 1.1 million transactions to date. And this is only in the year 2022. So what we have covered so far is that in December 2020, the banks joined us, the first 7 banks. And late last year, Investments, which is the Singapore Exchange, they joined us as a data provider. So now today, you can actually go to SGFinDex and ask for information from the banks and as well as your investment data from the Singapore Exchange. Later this year, 7 life insurers will be joining us. And this is where we feel that we would have completed the ecosystem in terms of the data, the financial data that's going to be available for users to actually do their financial planning. The next step is that we're going to take all these financial models that we have built for the banks and the insurers, and we're going to invite the rest of the banks beyond the 7 to come on board. And this will actually increase more customers to SGFinDex. So our adoption should grow. But beyond that, what's next is actually pretty interesting. What we realized is that SGFinDex was a test case. It was a use case for us just to test and fill technical features that we wanted to try out. We were talking about whether or not we can connect the information between public and private. So we tested these use cases and we distilled the base layer of the data exchange from SGFinDex, and we are going to call it SGDex, which is Singapore Data Exchange. So how this is going to work is that it's going to become like a platform as a service. Anyone who wants to spin up their own data exchange can approach us and take our platform, build apps on top of it, and run it for their sector. So one of these sectors that we are currently working on is for the trade and logistics. I don't want to give names because there's a launch coming up, but SGDex is built to be sector agnostic. Any industry that has the need to transfer data, and it used to be private, public, and we bridge the gap of public and private to allow them to build more data transformation projects. So they no longer have to worry about how do you scale this, because we have built a platform that can be used for scale. And most importantly, the business principles of being completely neutral, right? How it's designed to be secure, how it's designed to be user consented or company consented, and how it's designed that we are ignorant of the data that flows through. We are unable to see it anyway. Allows us to be a very neutral operator for such infrastructure. So like I said before, the businesses actually care a lot about, or rather worry a lot about competition. We don't want to go into that space. We just want to build something that is for public good, put it there, and allow business innovations to take over. So if you need more information, please scan this QR code. It'll bring you to the page where you can contact the team. And I actually open myself for questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Daryl. So this is a really interesting initiative. You said there's 7 banks, I think, have taken part in this initially. I think in Singapore, you've got, I think, well over 100 banks, maybe more than 200, who you're going to now invite into SGFinDex. What kind of buy-in is there amongst the rest, or are we not at that point yet?
There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest from banks, especially that were not part of the pilot 7. We were just taking our time to make sure that everything works, everything is proven to be scalable and no hiccups, before we open it up for everyone else. So there is definitely interest, and we will be looking forward to serve them shortly in the coming year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Daryl, for your presentation. Thank you for your time today. And we'll be talking to some of your colleagues right next.
Yep.